This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Abercrombie Kids is bringing the cheer all holiday season and the gifts too. No matter how long their wish list is, there's always room for just one more. Whether it's a new winter coat, an extra pair of jeans, or cozy matching sweat sets, get gifting with looks they've been waiting for all year. Shop Abercrombie Kids in the app, online, and in stores.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. So Netflix is basically Santa this year. 2 NFL games on Christmas Day, streaming live. At 1 p.m. Eastern, it's Cowboys, Commanders. Then at 4:30, you've got Lions, Vikings. Midwest football, playoff stakes, and probably some snow. Watching holiday football is a tradition the whole family can enjoy. Open some gifts, grab some food, settle in, and watch NFL Live on Netflix this Christmas Day.
Hello everyone, Chris here. Just a quick reminder that this episode of How We're the Podcast is sponsored by LifeScore Bet, a proud principal partner of Sunderland AFC. And if you're looking to get started, they've got a cracking welcome offer for new customers. Bet £10 on sports and get £30 in free bets. Simple as that. So if you're ready to join the action, make sure you're doing it with LifeScore Bet, the home of total betting. New members only. Bet more than £10 on sports within 14 days. Free bets valid 7 days. £20 to use on Sportsbook. £10 on Bet Builder. Terms and conditions and deposit exclusions apply. Please bet responsibly and remember, over 18s only. And now, cue the music. Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast sponsored by LifeScore Bet. And welcome to our Sunday supplement to take an in-depth look at Sunderland's goalless draw on the South Coast against Brighton and Hove Albion, which means we not only remain unbeaten in the league at the Amex Stadium, mainly because this was our first league meeting there, but it means we keep the points ticking over nicely against a host who had won 4 and only lost once in 8 on home soil this season. So a solid point on paper, and if you listen to the initial reaction, you will have got the thoughts of Andrew and Johnny on that, but I promise to give today's guests a tougher time going through all the ins and outs, because first, I am very pleased to have the company of Martin Wallace. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Chris. Well, I did listen to your podcast with Johnny and Andrew earlier. I didn't think you gave them a particularly light ride, so I'm a bit nervous now. What are you going to throw at us?
Well, that's it. I'm gonna get really stuck in today. But first, I mean, a really tough question first. It's so close to Christmas. Are you ready, mate?
I was born ready, Chris. No, I'm good. You know what? My wife prepares for Christmas like ridiculously early. Like she's got all the Christmas shopping done by the end of September. So that kind of makes me think I'm late if I haven't got it done by the first week of October. So I kind of get things done. So and where I live in Australia, things can take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks to get here. So you have to prepare a little bit in advance. So no, I haven't wrapped anything yet, but I've got everything. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, I've got a huge pile of boxes behind me that are just waiting to be wrapped, and they've just been staring at me for about a week. But as I said, Martin, close to Christmas, we got our kind of Santa came early. I said the other day for Sunderland fans, but. A goalless draw on the South Coast of Brighton. I mean, in some ways, I've got to be pleased with that. Probably would have taken that.
I always go off the rationale. If you win your home games and draw your away games, you'll be pretty up there by the end of the season. And I think if we're sitting here in the week before Christmas, the last game before Christmas, and we've accumulated the number of points we've accumulated. Everything's looking pretty good, isn't it? Like, you can pick the bones out with different bits and pieces. And, as we'll get into, there's some things that you'd probably like to see a bit of an improvement on come January and February. But again, if you take a step back and you look at the fixtures that we've had, this December was going to be the the month that we absolutely got found out, wasn't it? Where we get no points, we get hammered home and away. We're doing all right. And I think every Sunderland supporter will be pretty content, if not happy or deliriously happy with how everything's gone here. And I tell you, if you'd said by the time you go into Christmas, we'd have this amount of points, every single person listening to the podcast would have said, yes, thank you very much. I will take that every day of the week. So, hey, look, it's still looking good.
Yeah, we did mention the other day about Sunderland fans, and I include myself in there, potentially getting greedy when you look at the individual games. But anyway, as we say, we always like to have someone from the press box to help us on our Sunday supplement, and especially to take our rose-tinted specs off on a Sunday morning to tell us how it is. And today's no different because we're very pleased to be joined by James Hunter. Hello, James.
Hello there. Good morning, guys. How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Really appreciate you joining us because it's still dark outside.
It's still dark outside. Yeah. But no, I'm an early bird, so I'm quite happy with that. That's fine.
Yeah. But just on that topic, James, typical, isn't it? What is it, the 21st of December? But we get a long trip to Brighton, and I tell you what, you saw the away fans there, and it's a long old trip to Brighton. But God, we didn't have to pack them in this close to Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, it always seemed to me, throughout all my years covering Sunderland, it always seemed that there was a long trip just before Christmas, a London trip or something. Maybe it was just my memory playing tricks on me, but it always seemed to be like at least one really long haul trip. And it doesn't get much further than Brighton, maybe Bournemouth. But yeah, Bournemouth, Brighton, something like that on the south coast at this stage. But I was just, the pictures that I've seen on Match of the Day and the extended highlights on Sky and stuff, saw the Sunderland fans in Santa hats and what have you. So, yeah, they certainly enjoyed themselves. And even though come away with a single point rather than three, I think, people have a pretty happy Christmas, pretty Merry Christmas, given the whole situation and recent results.
And actually, James, Brighton isn't a place we go to very often, is it? Because, you look back, in the last time we played them in the league was 2005. Last time we played them in any competition was 2011. And actually, it was quite interesting. So on the BBC website, and this is probably just me being old, James, but the whole concept of football starting in 1992, because the headline on the BBC, James, is Sunderland and Brighton draw for their first meeting in the Premier League.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when carbon dating's wrong, isn't it? We argue about whether the world was created in 7 days. What we all know is that the world didn't actually start until 1992. And anyone that says otherwise, is proven wrong time and again every time Premier League records are set. That makes me from part of prehistory, and I guess you guys as well. So, what does that really say? Yeah, it does grate a bit that football didn't exist before the Premier League was invented. But yeah, I mean, crikey, we've been dealing with that for so many years now. It's just become one of those axioms, hasn't it, in football? I was just thinking there when you were mentioning going to Brighton. Was the last time Sunderland were at Brighton? Was that a cup game, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah,
Was it Steve Bruce?
It
Steve
was
Bruce in charge then.
Steve Bruce,
I remember.
Steve Bruce against Gus Poyet, actually.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and I think Tarico came on as a sub. I think
he did.
Go from memory, and we got beat in extra time. Mikhail Smith, yes. I think, scored.
I couldn't remember the scorer, but I do remember losing there and going to that new ground. Never thinking that it was likely to be a Premier League fixture.
Yeah. We haven't met in the top flight since, I think it was 1983 the last time. That was at Roker Park. We haven't met at their place in the top flight since September 1982. But just while we've got you on, James, actually, just get someone from the press box kind of view on it, because obviously some of the fixtures have been moved in, and I want to say January, but might even be further on, looking at February, because the Bournemouth game, the Bournemouth away game's been changed to a 12:15 kickoff. Now, There's been a lot of unrest about that, because obviously that's a long trip for the lads. But is there anything the club can do about that?
There's absolutely nothing, I'm afraid. I completely understand why fans are infuriated by that. It's it's all I can say to you is that the companies make their decisions based on the games that they want to cover and on the games that they want to that they need to cover for contractual reasons in some cases, and they pay no regard to fans and travelling times and travelling distances. They pay absolutely no heed to that whatsoever. And if you're picked by the TV companies for a live game, you don't get any say in it. I mean, you can get in touch and you can say, please don't pick us, but ultimately, if they say that that's when it's going to be and where it's going to be, then that's what's going to happen. I mean, as I say, I understand completely why fans are infuriated by that. It doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. Of course, there'll be some fans that will will wear it as a badge of honour that they're setting off at 2 a.m. or whatever time you're going to need to do, because fans do that, of course. And all I can say is, in another time, I would have been the same, either setting off at the crack of, well, not even the crack of dawn, well before the crack of dawn, or setting off the day before. It's it's thoughtless, it's heedless, but there's nothing that can be done, unfortunately.
Yeah, to be fair, I remember a time when I went out on the town with the lads, and rather than going home, we went straight for the coach for the away game.
There you go. You see, and it's a story you're still telling now, and, and there'll be fans that will do the same about this Brighton trip. But it's a ludicrous decision.
Yeah, that's it. I thought it was brilliant. But anyway, let's move on. But let's get into it. Let's get into the Brighton game, and let's start with the team, Martin, because you are our starting 11 guru on a weekend. Now, it is interesting because, like I said, and you touched on it, that everybody's been going, AFCON and so many changes and the team's going to change loads. And I kind of looked at it before and I thought, hang on a minute, when you think about it, it's only 3 changes really. And then you've got Rigg, who was involved a lot, certainly in the earlier stages of the season. And Geertruida, who's, come into the side, especially a lot when we've been playing 5 at the back. Maybe Adingra. He's maybe the one you can isolate out of that. But only 3 changes, and I suppose the most important question was, how close were you trying to predict it?
I was pretty close. It was 4 changes, was it? Because Ronaldo, Siddiqui, Traore and Talbi came out from the Newcastle game, I think, if I'm correct in saying that. 4. Yeah.
4. Okay.
Excellent. So, but within those 4 changes...
That's why you're the starting 11 guru, you see.
Well, this is it. I'm earning money already, aren't I? But within those 4 changes, you've got 2 who've been vitally important, haven't you? Siddiqui and Ronaldo. The other 2, Traore and Talbi, have kind of come in and out of the side, and they've been involved in things, but they've maybe been a little bit in the periphery. We've already coped without Ronaldo for 3 games after his red card against Villa earlier in the season, haven't we? So the biggest thing was Siddiqui, I think, his absence. And obviously, Ronaldo was fantastic, don't get me wrong. I think he is hugely important to how we play and what we do and all that sort of stuff. So when you looked at the potential starting 11, now I thought we'd go in with 4 at the back, and I think that was the first sort of topic of conversation. It wasn't whether it was going to be a 4 or whether it was going to be a 5. But we've seen with Ronaldo out this season, we've seen Trey Hume go over the left back for those games. Even away at Man City, he went over to left wing back, didn't he? So I thought Trey Hume would come over and play in that spot. Then you've got Geertruida, who I really hoped he would take Siddiqui's position. I wasn't sure he would, but I really hoped he would, because I thought it would be a really good chance to see him play there. I thought he did brilliantly, by the way. I thought he stepped into that role and looked great. Out wide, I think the interesting one, and the one I got wrong, I thought Mundle would start, and I didn't think Chris Rigg would start out wide. And I thought Chris Rigg did okay. I don't think he had his best game. I thought he looked a little bit off the pace, but that's expected when you're a player like that who hasn't actually been on the pitch very much over the past couple of months. And I did think Isidore would start. And the reason I thought Isidore would start was I thought Brighton would have a little bit more of the ball, and we'd try to catch him on the break with his pace. So I was, to answer your question, I was a very long answer to your question. I was 2 players away from getting it spot on. And that was, I think I had Mundle in for Rigg and Isidore in for Brian Broby.
Yeah, I'd expect nothing less from our starting 11 guru to have a long answer on what the starting 11 is. And of course, I would expect you to put me right as well when I get the number of changes wrong. But James, Just on that starting 11, I mean, Martin's right in that you now see a Sunderland starting 11, especially one, I suppose, when we're making the changes we had to make. But when you look at it now, and you look at the 11 when it's announced, you almost spend the next 5 minutes trying to work out or trying to second guess the manager on how that 11 are going to set up. Now, again, there was that kind of debate. Was he going to go 5 at the back? He might play it safe because he's made all those changes. And you know, he ended up putting Gachada in midfield, which I think everybody wanted him to. But was there any surprises in there for you?
Well, first of all, I think it shows the flexibility that Sunderland have got now. That they've got so many players that they can flip from one formation or one shape to another if needed or if required, which can only be a good thing. You know, to have that kind of or have those kind of options. You know, to for the manager to work with. I think just looking at that team, I thought that was going to be a back four. I didn't think he'd play a back five. I mean, he has done back five at times this season, but I just thought Brighton away from home, I expected him to go with a back four. I didn't know exactly until the teams were announced exactly how he was going to set up. But looking at that team, that's not out of the ordinary, I shouldn't think. The only question for me, I think that if he'd have been 100% fit, you know, and had been playing games more recently, I would have preferred to have seen Mundle out wide left rather than Adingra. Of all the new players that have come in, Adingra has been the one that has not quite settled, I don't think. I mean, he does some exciting and positive things, but his end product is still lacking in my opinion. Whereas every time Mundle gets the ball, he's direct and he does have an end product. I think he produced more in the time that he was on the pitch as a sub than Adingra did as a starter. But of course, as we know, Mundle's only not long come back from injury, so I guess that it wasn't too much of a surprise that Adingra got the nod ahead of him. But yeah, I thought that was a good lineup, and given that there had to be changes made after players disappearing to AFCON, that's a strong lineup, I thought.
Yeah, just very quickly, James, because you mentioned Mundle, and just like Martin, I thought it seemed like Regis Labris had been almost preparing Mundle by giving him the minutes from the bench, because he seemed to be the favourite almost to come on first during games to give us that spark. Now, and then when you think about it, he's probably had more minutes recently than Adingra on the pitch. And yet, when it came to the starting 11, I thought it was really interesting then that Adingra came in rather than Mundle, because it seemed like he'd been setting it up so Mundle could come into that role.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that you're right, just more recently, Mundle has been getting onto the pitch ahead of Adingra, but I think obviously Adingra had a full pre-season, didn't he? Which Mundle hasn't. So possibly from starting games, that would be the biggest consideration, I would think.
I think the other thing which is interesting with that is I don't think they expected Adingra to be here at this point. I think they thought he was going off to AFCON as well, so they've been preparing Mundle to try to ramp him up, and then all of a sudden they've got the option of Adingra as well, who has been match fit or fit enough to be on the bench and all that stuff all season, haven't they? So it's probably thrown them a little bit in terms of what they're preparing for. And I think if Adingra wasn't with the squad, then Mundle would be a guaranteed first choice.
Yeah, I mean
that's true. That's true. That's probably an option that he didn't expect to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone expected him to be gone for this period. But Martin, just again on before we leave the team sheet, because I think everybody kind of almost thought, well, is this the time? Everybody's been asking the question. The name on everyone's lips has been Dan Neil, and we're only 10 days away from the January transfer window opening, and it's almost that's waiting for AFCON to get games, waiting for AFCON. It comes, players leave, he's still on the bench and doesn't get any minutes. Where do you think that leaves Dan Neil?
I'd be shocked if Dan Neil's here at the end of January. I think you've seen all throughout the season, even when there's been an opportunity to bring somebody into the team, bring somebody off the bench, it's been Rig or Gertrude who's come on to play in midfield, haven't they? cast your mind back to early in the season. It was the Aston Villa game, wasn't it, where we had the injury to Diarra, and Rig was chosen ahead of Dan Neil and other people to come into the team on that occasion. And I think that just showed you where players are. And, we know how Sunderland work, don't we? And it's not necessarily all about who's going to give us the best performance today. There's a long-term view in here as well, isn't there? And they want to develop Rig. Rig's committed his future at the club. They want to give him minutes. They want to give him action around the team. And, nobody, none of us anyway, truly know the ins and outs of Dan Neil's contract situation. But we do know that he's turned down contracts last season and all that sort of stuff. And the reality is he's put himself 2 or 3 places behind other people. Now, if behind the scenes conversations going on, Dan Neil's leaving in January, which, as I say, I'd be shocked if he was still here, then it makes complete sense to give Rig that game. What sense would it make to give Dan Neil a game? Unless you think Dan Neil can do a much better job than Rig on this occasion. And look, against Brighton, Rig was out wide on the right. You wouldn't put Dan Neil out wide on the right. So really, if Dan Neil's going to come into that team, you're saying he's better today than Xhaka, Geertruida, or Lefebvre, and he's not. So the reality is, Dan Neil couldn't do that job that Chris Rig was going to do yesterday. So it makes sense completely to leave him on the bench. Now, look, I think it causes all sorts of questions about squad depth and all that sort of stuff, because obviously if Dan Neil leaves, he's been on the bench all season. We need somebody to come who really is, potentially happy to sit on the bench. Obviously, Diarra is going to be back after he returns from AFCON. But, you're going to need some players to come in to take that position, because, I think you look at the bench yesterday, given the players that we've got over at AFCON, and, you're 1 or 2 injuries from having a bench primarily full of kids, aren't you? So the strength and depth isn't necessarily there as much as you'd ideally like it. But again, as you said earlier, Chris, potentially being greedy at some things with the recruitment that we've had. But no, I think, look, I wasn't surprised that Dan Neil didn't start yesterday. I would have been really surprised if he had started, because he's been nowhere near the first team in terms of getting minutes on the pitch, has he? So it's one of those unfortunate things, because you would love to have seen Dan Neil come and step up and play in the Premier League and do well and all that sort of stuff, but it just looks likely, via a set of circumstances that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on this, James, because, whether or not you agree with Martin in terms of the fact, that he may have gotten more minutes on the pitch if he had signed a contract, and, that the club were looking long-term and thinking, well, he's going to be with the club for the next few years, so we'll give him more minutes. The other one I wanted to raise with you as well, which a few people raised on the socials with us after the game in our 3-word reviews, was Eliza Mayenda, who also didn't get any minutes and hasn't really been getting any minutes, even as a substitute on the bench. I mean, you're talking about Dan Neil potentially moving on, but there's a contract situation there. I mean, can you imagine Eliza Mayenda knocking on the door as well and saying, well, if I'm not playing here, can I maybe get a loan move for 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to deal with those in turn, first of all, Dan Neil. I mean, I'm a huge Dan Neil fan. Obviously, he was integral to Sunderland's promotion last season. But he's got 2 issues, really, hasn't he? Or 2 problems to consider. The first is Sunderland have raised the level, brought in better players, better midfielders. So from being a mainstay of that team last season, he's now fighting for places, and as Martin was saying, he's now competing against the likes of Granit Xhaka and Habib Diarra and Siddiqui. Suddenly he is very much a second, not second tier as in Championship. He's second tier within Sunderland's squad. He's not a regular starter. So there's that, because the level is raised. And the second thing is the contract situation. I do think that because Sunderland couldn't know whether he would still be here this season, whether he might have moved on in the summer, because he'd made it clear that he wasn't going to sign a new deal, or certainly not the new deal that he was offered, that basically the world's turned and Sunderland have moved on and said, well, we've got to plan without you and make their preparations, and that squeezed Dan out a bit. It's a great shame because it's always fantastic to see a hometown player doing well as he did last season and being the heartbeat of the side. But I think that all things considered, the level's been raised now, and he now can't get into the team on merit. It's not that he's been left out of spite or out of some kind of situation to squeeze him out of the club. There are better players, playing in those positions, and I think that Sunderland fans would want Regis Labrie to name his strongest side and not sort of. Well, we've seen throughout the team, haven't we? Even with Anthony Patterson, another player who I really like, another local lad. There's no room for sentiment. As if you want to get on in the Premier League and you want to do as Sunderland are doing this season and be competing in the top 6, 7, 8, of the Premier League. There's no room for sentiment in these matters. So that's where I am with Dan Neil. You also asked about Eliza Mayenda. I think he can feel a little bit unfortunate, but obviously the rise of Brian Robbie, I can even get my teeth around the name.
It's easy for you to say, James.
It is, not at this time on the morning, it isn't. But the rise of Robbie has meant that there's a genuine different option. I think that Isidore and Mayenda are quite similar in a way. But Robbie gives Sunderland and Labrie an extra option. And at the moment, he's using Isidore and Robbie, either both of them together or one from the bench. And Mayenda's having to wait his turn. But you can't go through the season with only 2 strikers. You need at least 3. You need 3, at least. So Mayenda will get games. There are going to be injuries. Sunderland aren't going to be blessed with a situation where nobody gets an injury between now and May, are they? So he is going to get opportunities. As will Dan Neil if he does stay. There will be injuries. Again, he is struggling to get into the side while everybody's fit. But yeah, there'll be injuries. So I would hope that Mayenda stays because he will get opportunities. And he has proved already this season that he can be a threat in the Premier League. But I can understand why it's frustrating for any player. Nobody wants to be sitting there and watching from the sidelines and not feel part of it. Again, feel for how Anthony Patterson must feel because he's in a situation where, that he's only got one place open to him.
Well, just very, very quickly on that, James. I don't know whether you've got your ear to the ground, but is there any truth in the links with Southampton for Anthony Patterson?
I couldn't tell you. I honestly don't know. I don't know on that one. I guess it would make sense from Southampton's point of view. It would probably make sense from Anthony Patterson's point of view as well because he wants to play games. And he's not going to be a regular starter ahead of Robin Rose at any time now. So yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. If I did know, I would say. Yeah, I hope he stays because I like him and because he's local and all those things and what he achieved what he helped this club achieve last year. But I also know that he wants to play.
Well, either that, James, or you're keeping that exclusive in your back pocket for the coming weeks. But before we get into the action, I think that's a quick time to take a quick break. We'll be back very soon.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Jason Momoa, and I'll be your finance professor today. Welcome to Banking Smarter 101 with Chime. Bam! First lesson, sign up for Chime and set up direct deposit. You'll be joining millions of members banking fee-free. Second lesson, get cash back on eligible purchases while building credit and a higher APY on your savings. That's how you bank smarter this season. Fa-la-la-la-la, class dismissed. Join Chime today.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and a secure Chime Visa credit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. Details at chime.com/feesinfo. With a qualifying direct deposit, earn 1.5% cash back on eligible secure Chime Visa credit card purchases. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. APY means annual percentage yield. Learn about credit building and more at chime.com.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
And welcome back to Howie the podcast. And it's about time we got into the action. And as it started out as the Amex Stadium, after just a minute or so, Brighton put us under pressure with a corner. And we're just talking about goalkeepers just before the break. And Roofs had to come up and pull out a great save, a header from around 6 yards out. But then after that, Martin, we took control, I thought. I thought our press was fantastic. You looked at us out of possession. It looked like a 4-4-2, an old-fashioned 4-4-2 almost. We pinned them high up the pitch. And it's almost, I had this impression in my head. And again, you're just thinking about changes. You're thinking about, the disruption, and maybe we haven't got the consistency in that side. But I was expecting us to be really conservative, maybe sit back, allow Brighton to have a lot of possession. But we pushed right in their faces and pressed them. And I think Brighton was surprised at how we approached the game.
Well, I think they probably were. And you look at Brighton's home record this season, they've beaten Man City at home, they've beaten Newcastle at home, they've got good results against other clubs, drawn a lot of games. And this is a difficult place to go to. But I think, something casts your mind back to the Chelsea game. I know we played a different formation that occasion, but we kind of started with that same intent where we pressed them high up the pitch. We didn't allow them time on the ball. And, I listened to the conversation you had with the Brighton supporter earlier in the week, Chris. I think in the fan focus interview that Matty does on the website as well. And they were saying if Brighton are pressed, they'll panic and they'll struggle because they really can't cope with that. So, our cursory research into the opposition, the club have obviously got teams of people who are looking at all this sort of stuff. So, like that to me wasn't a surprise that we did that. And look, going back to the formation bit, you said it looks like a 4-4-2 out of possession. That's how we played in the vast majority of games since the Briss has come in, haven't we? We've always done that. We've pushed the most advanced central midfielder up alongside the striker. Parts of last season it was Job, parts of last season it was Chris Rigg, and they go into that shape. So, when you've taken a few players out the side, it makes complete sense to me that we've kind of reverted back to what the squad's been coached in primarily over the last 18 months, and that's that formation, because everybody knows the jobs. Even Chris Rigg, if you look at him on the right-hand side, that's our position he's played regularly, but he knows what that position needs to do to contribute to the team. And from a defensive point of view, he did pretty well. So you kind of got that system, which enables us to press. And I thought, the really interesting bit of it, which was a little bit of a change, was because Crowder was in midfield, Xhaka could press higher up. And he was leading the press. And I think when you've got Xhaka leading that press and controlling and dictating and orchestrating that press, it's really impressive. Because the players knew exactly when to go, when to stop. And, I made the comment to Andrew on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I really love watching us out of possession and defending. And he had a little heart attack, and I hate watching us defend. But I think that we've got it down to a real art. And I think when you watch us out of possession, every single player is drilled in what they're doing, and when the team are doing it collectively and individually, and I just think it's really impressive. And look, there was countless times we pressed Brighton, we forced them back. They were passing, trying to work some space into the back four, into the defensive midfield player. They couldn't work an angle, so they just ended up hoofing it. And Ballard and Alderete was sweeping up the long ball. So I actually thought thought for the first hour, I know we're just talking about the first half at the minute, but for the first hour, we were really impressive in how we did that, and we forced Brighton really off their game. And I thought we were absolutely in control of that first half. I thought we did tremendously well. And again, I just think it's so impressive. You're going away to a side like that who's an established Premier League side, and we're going, bollocks to you, we're going to take you on. And it's that, like, they've absolutely got no fear out doing it. They've got a supreme confidence in what they can go out on the pitch and do. And the fact that we're doing that without Siddiqui, without Ronaldo, without Talbi, without Traore, right? I just think that is testament to the mentality and the attitude that the squad and the coaches have really got collectively, because it would be really easy to use an excuse. I think other teams wouldn't they? You go, oh shit, we haven't got Siddiqui, we haven't got Ronaldo, we're going to dial it in today. It's an excuse. If we don't win, it's all right because they're not here. And that was absolutely not the case. And I think Xhaka plays a pivotal role in that. You could see him barking at everybody all game, couldn't you? But I thought, as a collective, it's brilliant to watch because we all know what to do. We all know the jobs that we're doing. And the move around is a genuine team, which, even despite personnel changes. So I thought we did really well in that opening spell.
Yeah, I mean, James, I thought, it was really interesting thinking back to the press conference this week, the manager's press conference, when he was asked about Brighton. And I mean, in the way that he does, he answered a question with a big grin on his face when it came into what, the plan for Brighton. Because I think he just loves coming up with specific plans for specific opposition. And I just think in this, especially in that first half, and before we move on to that second half, but especially in that first 45 minutes, I thought it was a tactical masterclass from Register Briss that, and we'd had all of this information from Brighton fans to tell us, well, if you want to beat us, put pressure on us and pin us in, and we can't really handle it. But I just, in that first half, and sometimes you almost forget who you're playing and where you actually are, because I thought in that first half we made Brighton look very average.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the game plan worked a treat, didn't it? For the first hour, as Martin said, really, Sunderland were by far the better team, deserved to be in front, and they've got Brighton on the back foot, really. I think when you look at it now, Brighton are an established Premier League side and a good established Premier League side. And they've got an excellent young coach as well. But Sunderland went there and showed no fear. I mean, all the excuses were there if Sunderland chose to make them. The players going off to AFCON, after the Lord Mayor's show, after the Derby win last weekend. Sunderland were looking for excuses for a flat performance and a long trip the week before Christmas. They were there if Sunderland wanted them. But they refused to make those kind of excuses. They said, let's push on and pick up and go on from here. And they were really positive. And it's not just at Brighton either. I mean, looking further back, I mean, look at the attitude and the positivity and the way that Sunderland went about the task, even at Liverpool a few weeks ago. It's not that Sunderland have been promoted to the Premier League and are mounting a rearguard action and clinging on in games and trying to grind out enough points to stay in the Premier League. They're really not. They're taking the game to opponents of all standards. And all right, yeah, you're not going to get it right every single time. There have been occasions when thinking Manchester United away for one when it hasn't worked. The vast majority of the time it has worked and it is reaping a dividend for them. I mean, one of the big things, one of the most impressive things for me, for Sunderland, is the clean sheets. They've got half a dozen clean sheets already at this point before Christmas. If you're going to get anywhere in the Premier League as a newly promoted club, you've got to find a way to keep clean sheets. And they've done that. That's more than 1 in 3, isn't it? More than 1 clean sheet in every 3 games, which is excellent. And defensively, with Dan Ballard and Alderete, they've been absolutely rock solid, haven't they? So I've been really, really, really impressed, and I'm impressed with the job that they did down at Brighton. Yes, of course, they had to absorb some pressure at times. You're not going to go through Premier League games against any team, really, without having a spell where you need to absorb pressure. But I just thought that Sunderland had Brighton on the back foot in that first 45 minutes to an hour. They were pressing them, and if just they could have made one of the couple of chances that they created count. I think there was the bad back pass that Dan Ballard seized on, wasn't there, for one, and there was the Brobby chance as well, when he got through, brought a save out of the keeper. Just to think of 2 off the top of my head. If they could have just made one of those count and had something tangible for at half time to show for their effort, then that would have been perfect. But even so, excellent performance, really, really good away from home. I don't think there'll be too many fans that will be complaining at coming home with a point from Brighton.
Yeah, well, just perfect words from James there to lead me into my next point, Martin, because in that first half, is completely solid at the back. I think we restricted them to 1 shot on target in that whole first 45 minutes or something like that. But I'm just looking down at my notes, and at the end of the first half, I said, very good performance, dominant and all this sort of stuff. But then I'm looking at the first half, and James there was trying to go through the chances we had, and it's almost like, oh, hang on, can I remember any? And I'm looking at my notes, and I've got half chance after 10 minutes when a brilliant move that ended with us winning a corner. An Alderete shot that was easily saved after about 15 minutes. I think it was Enzo Lefebvre had a shot, I think, that was easily saved. And I'm going through, and James mentioned a couple others. But, and that's been a story, I think, all season, that if we're going to point to a place or an area in the team where we can say maybe that's the place where we can improve, it's that creativity, it's that creating chances. But is there an element in this game, Martin, of saying, well, that kind of goes out the window because we made so many changes? Or do we point at that first and half and say, okay, well, it's a brilliant performance, but in future, if we're that dominant, we need to really take advantage of it?
I don't think the players' availability or lack thereof is an excuse for anything. I don't think it actually changed anything because, as I say, the players are so well drilled, and I do think that the team has a bit of an issue with creativity and goal scoring, right? And I think that's not dependent on those players being available or not. I think it's part of the way that we set up. It was interesting, we've scored 19 goals, which I think that's the lowest out of the top 9 or 10. And I think in the commentary I was listening to yesterday, it said that we've got the lowest amount of first half goals in the league. So that suggests to me that's a game plan rather than anything else. If there's an opportunity comes along, snatch it, absolutely. And the chance that we've talked about there, I think there was a Ballard header as well, wasn't there? That he may have been able to do better with. But you wouldn't describe any of those as being chances that we've carved out and created, and the gilt-edged chances. They were where we'd work the ball into an area, we'd be able to have a shot or a header, but there weren't excellent chances. We're not sitting here going, he should have stuck that one away, he should have put that one away. There were more opportune things that happened rather than us carving them apart and going for it. So I think we do like to keep things tight-ish in the first half and then try to take advantage of it when the game opens up in the second half, especially away from home, when teams will get a little bit nervous, a little bit agitated. The crowd will get a little bit nervous and seeing. You could see that yesterday, couldn't you? You get into that period. It was actually that period just before they made all the subs in that first 50 minutes of the second half. The crowd were getting a little bit edgy and agitated, and you kind of going, if we can go on the break here and actually get something. So, look, I think there's a bigger conversation to be had about the lack of creativity and where that stems from, right? So is that actually directly from the wings, or is actually how we were setting up in midfield? And as a consequence, the wingers aren't getting the ball in the right positions. But I thought Adingra had the ball, a lot of good ball yesterday, especially in the first half. I thought we sprang him a lot, and he just wasn't able to get past the defender on the last occasion, or pick the right pass, or get the right cross in. So, you potentially look at that and say, well, that was his rustiness, his lack of match sharpness. He's been out the team for, 2.5 months. But look, I think, I still think we did well. And again, on another day, one of those chances goes in, and then you've got something to defend, and the game opens up even more, doesn't it? But it's, I do think the bigger picture with this conversation is that there is an issue with us scoring goals and creating chances. And I suspect it'll be rectified in January.
It'd be interesting to bring you in on that, James, because we were so dominant in our first 45 minutes. And just to pick up on that point that Martin made, I did think we were slightly lopsided, where I thought Chris Rigg was really struggling to get in the game on the right-hand side. And everything you saw, even when Xhaka got the ball, it seemed to be, right, I'm going to look out to that left-hand side and see what position Adingra's in, or try and get him in behind. Don't know whether that was a game plan or just naturally happened. But yeah, be interesting to hear your thoughts on that, James, and also the performance of Adingra as well.
Yeah, well, obviously Adingra was the outball, wasn't he, of the two of them, of Adingra and Rigg, the two men that played out wide yesterday. Adingra is the genuine wide man. Rigg was the person filling in and doing a job. So it wasn't really a great surprise that they went to Adingra whenever they could. He's the man with the pace and the trickery that they would look to. I think as Martin was saying there, too often he either didn't pick the right pass or didn't get past his man. And that's what I mean about the lack of end product. He does everything right, but just as that last thing, which is missing. And that's why it can be frustrating at times, because he has the ability and he has the skill. Doesn't always show it. I'm hoping that that's just a temporary thing, that it's a case of him just getting into the groove a bit more, getting more settled, getting a run of games, and in couple 2-3 games time, that problem fades away. I hope it's not a fundamental flaw. But yeah, that's what we need. We need more end product from Adingra. I do like him. I do think he's got something. But for me, I mean, I've seen more of Mundle, so maybe that's a consideration there. But I do like Romain Mundle. He always makes things happen when he comes on, and it was even the same last season. If you remember, he was injured, and then he came back into the side towards the end, and we was talking about just what an important player he will be in the running. He always makes things happen, and I'm happy that he's now fit again, and so there's some competition there on the left. But Adingra was the man that started yesterday. I thought his all-round game was okay, just the end product that was lacking. It didn't, as I say, it didn't surprise me that Xhaka and others were looking to move the ball out to the left. I think Rigg was tasked with doing a tough job on the right-hand side there. It's not his natural position. So he wasn't the man to go flying, down that right-hand touchline and whip the ball in. That's one of the things as well, considering Sunderland have got this battering ram centre forward in Brobby. They don't ping crosses into the box all the time. They do try and work it through. Maybe that's a bit old-fashioned now, peppering the penalty area with crosses, and because centre halves are so much bigger and goalkeepers come off the line to claim so much more. So maybe that's a shift in the way that football's played now. They do try and work it on the floor more. But yeah, so sometimes you need to go that route one, put the pressure on, because you can always get a knockdown or a flick on or something. Defender puts into his own net, whatever it might be. Sometimes a bit of disorganised chaos can help you in the penalty area.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, just on that theme, again, Martin, you were talking about potential. That was the game plan. We came out in the second half first thing we did, we pinned them in, and we had a long throw that eventually turned into a really good chance, Alderete from a few yards out. Now, I thought this was going to be a carbon copy of the Newcastle game, almost coming out in that first minute and taking the lead. Just part of your game that you were talking about, that game plan you think we had in the first half. Do you think this is part of it? Because we do seem to come out the blocks after half time.
Recently we have done, haven't we? I think we got the goal against Bournemouth like that, and obviously Newcastle, and then we almost got one yesterday as well. I think earlier in the season there was probably a little bit of criticism levelled at them about starting the second half slowly. But I think look, whether it's a deliberate tactic or whether that's just something that, we had to against Bournemouth, we had to get back into the game, and then, they get a little bit of confidence or momentum from doing that, and it happens again, and, you keep on doing it. It's, I just want to go back to the conversation about the attack and defence, right? Our defence is brilliant, right? And as a team, as James said, a newly promoted club, and I always caution against using newly promoted team, because this team isn't a newly promoted team. The club's newly promoted, but the team isn't. But our defence is so solid. We've got the third best defensive record. Only Arsenal and Man City have conceded fewer goals than we have this season, right? So we've got that defence sorted, so tight and so structured. And I think, again, James is spot on. Any team who's going to do anything, and I don't think it matters if you're newly promoted or not, your defence has got to be right. Because if you're leaking goals easily, or you're a bit soft in the centre of defence or whatever, you're going to get caught out. And I would much rather be in a position where we've got a really solid defence, and you're going, okay, what tweaks do we make to give us a little bit more of an attacking advantage in the second half? Or what tweaks do we make to give us more danger on the left wing, or whatever it is? I think you can kind of do that a lot more easily than you can by going, oh, sure, we're really good attacking-wise, but we're leaking a load of goals. How do we sew that up without sacrificing some attacking intent? So I think you've kind of got that to work into it. So I think, you've got that solid defence. And also, if you look at Lebris all throughout his managerial career, he hasn't been a manager to go gung-ho attack-wise. It's always been create a couple of chances, convert them, and keep it. He's not, even when you look at his stats at Lorient, it's not a case of creating 20 odd chances a game. It's creating a few and taking them. So I think you kind of got that aspect to go into it. Sorry, what was your original question? I completely derailed, Chris.
Oh, I think you answered it, mate. It was about the game plan in the second half, that we come out and try and get that goal in the first.
No, I think it's whether it's a deliberate ploy, whether it's by virtue of circumstance, because I think we had to against Bournemouth, because we were getting beat at half time, weren't we? And we had to kind of start that strongly, try to get back on level terms, and then that game kind of, the dimension of that game changes completely. Whether it was the same against Newcastle, you've had that strong possession-wise, a strong first half against Newcastle, but we hadn't got the ball into the box too much. We hadn't created a chance. So you go out going, okay, in the second half, we need to get the ball in the box more. And we had an opportunity to do so. And obviously that created a bit of havoc. But look, again, I think as an away team, if we can get that goal, especially in the second half, it changes the dynamic of the game completely, just because they've got to come out at us, and they're going to leave themselves more and more open to give us a chance to counterattack and then kill the game off completely. So I suspect it's probably apart from one bit and the other, it's probably a combination of factors. But I think we've started doing it extremely well, and we look dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, just on the hour mark, James, or around the hour mark, we made a double substitution. Adingra came off, and so did Chris Rigg. And as we mentioned, we brought Mundell on, and we brought Habib Diarra on as well. Now, I just wanted to kind of pick up on the Diarra substitution, because when he came on, I have to admit, he of course he's going to be rusty, but I thought he looked very rusty in terms of where he was chasing back at times. He looked leggy, almost as soon as he came on. But do you think that half an hour? Because I thought it is a strange thing that Regis Lebris said in the week that said this is the end of his rehab. Now, do you think it was almost I don't know whether it's a deal done with the country or something, or in conversations that, right, well, if he's going to AFCON, he needs to have half an hour on the pitch with Sunderland before he goes?
I wouldn't have thought that they're that structured about it, to be honest with you. I think that it would do no harm him having a short run out, obviously, before he goes away. I think the real rehab, if you like, from a Sunderland point of view, he's going to be doing at the AFCON, isn't he? By the time he comes back from AFCON, Sunderland are going to hope that he's back firing on all cylinders as he was, before his injury. So I think that from a Sunderland perspective, they're going to see his time away at AFCON as his rehab. It's no surprise that he was rusty. I mean, he'd been out since beginning of September. You forget as well. I mean, at the start of the season, we were saying what an important player he was for Sunderland, and how well he played in central midfield, and what a key and crucial player he'd been in those early games. So to lose him at that point, people were saying, how will Sunderland cope without Habib Diarra? Well, they've coped all right, to be fair. To have him now coming back into the picture after the AFCON, obviously, middle of January, to have him coming back into the picture and, hopefully back up to full speed by then. I mean, what an addition he's going to seem like, to have him back in there, even as an extra option, because you're not going to have to play the same personnel every single week. You can chop and change if you like. You can chop and change within games. What an extra option he's going to be. And I think, just looking back, you really do forget just how much Sunderland were sort of said to be leaning on him at the start of the season. And of course, without him, while he's been injured, Sunderland have done absolutely fine. I've been great, never mind fine. It's proved that Sunderland were not as reliant on him as people were saying.
Yeah, and it is going to be brilliant. It's going to be almost like January transfer window starts when he comes back, a brand new signing. But yeah, and I'm looking at, and again, you both said that it kind of changed around the hour mark. You said we were great for the first hour. Just looking at my notes, I'm looking at kind of coming up to 70 minutes, looking at the shots on target. They had 8 shots, 1 on target. We'd had 13, 6 on target. I said we're playing well. The game's there for the taking. Do we need to be positive? And then I saw a stat that Brighton had the joint most goals in the last 15 minutes in the Premier League, along with Liverpool, that had 11 goals. But Martin, on around 70 minutes, we made the substitution where Broby came off and Isidore came on. Again, I don't want to kind of single that out as it wasn't kind of Isidore as an individual or anything like that. But I do feel as soon as that substitution was made, and I'll put it to you, for whatever reason, the game swung. And whether it was our legs, whether it was Brighton, whether it was their tactics of pushing in the last 15 minutes, what do you think happened in that last 20 minutes or so?
Well, I think Brighton made a number of subs as well, didn't they? And I think that kind of is equally as a contributing factor to how that game changed. And look, they were always going to come at us in that last 15, 20 minutes, weren't they? They're drawing 0-0 at home. I said before, the crowd was getting a little bit nervous and edgy. They were always going to try to push on a bit. I actually thought when the subs were made, I thought they were all really good subs. You can criticise them in hindsight or pick the bones out of them in hindsight, but I thought Mundell actually did well when he came on. He had a great shot. Actually, if he took a touch on that shot rather than shooting, he probably gets brought down for a penalty, which would have been interesting as well. I thought Diarra did all right. Again, I thought he was rusty, but it was interesting he went out in the right rather than playing centrally, wasn't it? I think that told you everything about his fitness, and I suspect that was a case of you need to... Maybe the medical staff wanted to make sure he was all right after having a run of competitive action before sending him off or whatever it was. But I thought Broby was... I really like Brian Broby. I think I would have him starting more often than not, because I think his hold-up play is so good. And if you can get the people running off him, I think he can add an awful lot and get the ball in the box. I think he's the most natural goal scorer that we've got in forward positions. But I thought in the last 20 minutes, if Brighton are coming at us, then getting Wilson Isidore with his pace over the top gives us an outlet, like we saw against Liverpool, right? So I think that was the intention. I completely saw the logic in it when it happened. But the reality was, Isidore, because Brighton were pushing onto us, our out ball was from a lot deeper than it would be otherwise. So we were playing the ball up to Wilson on the halfway line with his back to goal rather than playing it 10 or 15 yards further forward when he's on the half turn to run at them. So we know that Wilson Isidore isn't as good at holding up the ball as Broby's going to be. So I think we kind of lost that ability to hold the ball a little bit further up the pitch, allow us to advance as a team 10 or 15 yards up the pitch. Isidore was losing the ball more often than not when it came up to him, and we were still trying to get out of the defence. So it was just wave after wave of attack because we weren't able to retain possession of the ball on the halfway line. So in hindsight, I think Lebris, if you asked him if he could go back in time to that sub, would he make the same sub? He probably wouldn't. But the logic when he made it was completely sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, James, it really shocked me, I have to admit, how tired we looked. It felt at times when Brighton were in possession that, that Sunderland players were trying to chase and almost kind of giving it up, just because they looked so tired. And, it did get a bit hairy, in those last kind of 15 minutes or so, because there was that chance with a cutback that I can't remember which Brighton player it was.
Wasn't it? Ayari.
Yeah, that if he just kept it low, I mean, that was basically game over and Brighton take all 3 points. But to be fair, other than that, we felt like we had them at arm's length, other than that brief moment where they actually got through and got to the byline. But were you surprised at the fact that Sunderland looked so tired? And is that a concern?
It kind of looked a little bit like they'd run out of steam, didn't they? I suppose a little bit of a factor in that is the changes. I think, there were players brought in who, like Rigg and Adingra, who have not been playing regularly. I know obviously they were off by that point, but I just think more generally the changes sort of disrupted the flow. So Sunderland didn't have the same energy levels, perhaps. Just thinking about the Brian Brobby change and Isidore coming on there. I mean, two completely different types of player. Obviously, Brobby's the battering ram, the guy that holds the ball up in the opponent's half and brings others into play. Isidore is the much faster, much pacier guy for the counter-attack. Obviously, plan A was to use Brobby. And plan A is plan A for a reason. That's the way that they thought they would get through Brighton. So they gave him as much time as they could. Then when Isidore comes on, at the point when Brighton are pressing Sunderland back, bring Isidore on. We've all seen how he can make a difference. Sometimes from an opponent's corner, one ball out and Isidore's off and away up the field. We've seen that last season. We've seen it this season. You only need to look back and think about that game against Liverpool to see how he can make a difference. But it's a totally different kind of game plan. And it was clearly not Lebris's first choice for that game yesterday. Sunderland didn't get Isidore the kind of service that he needs. They're not going to get it right every time. They did get it right in other games. They didn't get it right yesterday. So yeah, it was disappointing from that point of view, because if you've got somebody that holds the ball up in the opponent's half, then it allows your defence to step out and step forward. As it was, they never got the kind of ball to Isidore that he could, that fed him and that he would thrive on. So that meant that he was losing the ball to the big defenders. So it was coming back wave after wave. It made it tough for Sunderland, but you are going to, as I keep saying, Brighton and no mugs. They are going to have a spell, and that was their spell. Sunderland had an hour. They had 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Brighton of the game. So Sunderland had 2/3 of the game effectively, and Brighton the rest. I think that's going to be a pattern. You're not going to go through a 90-minute game, or very few teams go through a 90-minute game and dominate from start to finish. Only sort of your Arsenals and Man Cities and such have the ability to do that. Liverpool and a couple of others, but and Sunderland rode through that, put bodies on the line, defended well, and made sure that when Brighton were on top, they still kept that clean sheet. So they did everything that you could expect them to do, really, except for get that goal when they were on top. And football works that way, doesn't it? If you always scored when you were on top, it would be a much simpler game. It doesn't happen that way. What was noticeable was that Sunderland, not that I have any real time for this particular stat, but as other people are using it, I will. Sunderland's XG was far better down at Brighton than it was against Newcastle last weekend, and yet Sunderland get 1 point down at Brighton and no goals, and yet they get a goal and 3 points against Newcastle. What does that tell you about XG?
Yeah, just need to be glad Martin O'Neill's not with us, as we're mentioning XG. But actually, James, I just wanted to quickly say, because I think it does need addressing. We did mention him earlier, and we're talking about that substitution after about 20 minutes with Isidore coming on. And we looked at last season, and you look at, it's Bristol City, but you look at the likes of the goal against Bristol City, Mayenda picking the ball up on the halfway line when we're under pressure and taking it all the way up the pitch, regardless of what the end product is. Sometimes he gains you 30, 40 yards and you can get out and things like that. Now, I wanted to address it just purely because we got so many messages after the game on social media. Ollie James said Mayenda is needed. We had another one from G33 saying play Eliza Mayenda. We had another one from somebody else, I can't remember who it was now, but said free Eliza Mayenda. Now, it just does seem like it's I don't want to say it's a habit, but when you've got two strikers like that, you're swapping out Isidore and Broby. Is it sometimes, easy to forget to think, right, well, you've got another option on the bench?
Yeah, possibly it is. Possibly then Labrie looks behind him and thinks, well, Mayenda hasn't, played for half a dozen games or however many games it is. Is he as fit as Isidore? I think it shows sometimes, that there's not a lot between the two of them. They've got slightly different qualities, but the all-round package, there's not a lot between the two of them. I would have been equally happy yesterday if Mayenda had replaced Broby. I wouldn't have been standing there shouting at the radio saying, why have you brought on Mayenda? Why have you not brought on Isidore? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those where this is the hindsight thing, isn't it? If you bring on Isidore and Isidore scores, then nobody then gives a second thought to the fact that Mayenda's been overlooked. It's only because it turned out the way it did that we now go back and we say, well, why didn't you do something different? Well, that is the way that football works. We have the luxury of hindsight sitting here today and picking over the decisions. The head coach doesn't have that luxury, does he? He does what he thinks is right at the time. He's making the call in advance. We're looking back on it the next day. So I think there should be a rule involved that all supporters of all clubs should write down their opinions before the game, and they should only be allowed to hold that opinion after the game. So that there's no change in your mind afterwards based on events. You should, if you say if Robbie goes off, I want X player to come on. I think, and then you can't sort of change your position depending on what happened, because that's it. We are analysing that decision and who should have come on to replace Robbie. But if what the head coach had done had worked, nobody would care. It would have been Eliza who this morning, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the life of a football
manager.
manager.
What a great substitution it was if it had made the difference. But yeah, I mean, I'm making that point lightheartedly, but it does just go to show that coaches have to make the best decision at the time, and we do, have the luxury of looking back and knowing the outcome.
Yeah. And like I said, life of a football manager, walking that tightrope, and you've got people like us the next day with hindsight
Pesky
analysing it.
supporters, man.
Absolutely. But Martin, I mean, to be fair, I think it's a testament that actually the biggest thing that happened in the last 10 minutes or so, including injury time, was Tommy Watson coming on as sub. I thought we kept them at arm's length, Martin, as they tried to press for the winner. No real chances late on. But Tommy Watson coming on, actually, I think it was only his third substitute appearance in the Premier League for Brighton this season. But it is a really strange one, him coming on in front of the Sunderland fans, that, when players have a big moment like that at a club, normally they're able to celebrate it for months, if not years afterwards. But him disappearing straight after, it was a good chance for Sunderland fans to give him a bit of an ovation, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't. Look, I think he was thrown on yesterday in the hope that the typical football gods would align and
yeah, I thought that
he'd score a winner. I think honestly, if it'd been against anybody else, he wouldn't have come on. And it was just one of the last throw of the dice. He chucks we've seen it happen countless times before. And look, Tommy Watson obviously did what he did last season. I think he probably would have played. I know he's been injured this season, but I don't suspect he would have played that many more games for us if he'd stayed this season anyway. I think he's remembered extremely fondly at Sunderland because of what that goal enabled. But if he hadn't scored that, then he wouldn't have been remembered fondly at all. So I think I hope all fair play to him. He's did well at Wembley for us, and you think he got quite a nice ovation from the Sunderland supporters yesterday in recognition of that. But he's made his choices. He's moved on, and we have moved on, and then some.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's interesting you say that. I mean, first of all, there can't be many players that leave a club and have a mural up in the city centre just across there, where from where I'm talking to you, within a couple of months, or in a month or so of them leaving, without it being defaced or whatever. So that shows the impact that you made. But I think as well, just following up the point that Martin made there, I think he would have been very much in the mould of Anthony Patterson and Dan Neil, that the club has lifted the level since going into the Premier League, and his opportunities, had he stayed at Sunderland, would have been minimal.
Yeah. Just in summary, James, because again, the world that social media is, I'm just looking at two messages that we got in about it in our 3-word reviews. Back to back, we've got Steve Richards, who says good point away, and then we've got Ryan Evans, who said should have been 3. Now we've got I think the majority are going good point, solid point, and all that, but there's that fraction, there's that small percentage that makes you think, if we just pushed that extra 5%, if we made that chance. But you've got to keep coming back to the fact, going to a side like Brighton, top half in the Premier League, I think they've finished in the top 10 3 out of the last 4 seasons, that you go there, and if you come away with frustration, you haven't taken all 3 points, it's just another sign of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, can I add another 3-word verdict to it? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean, it's easy to look back on things and say, it was a point, but it should have been 3. But yeah, it could have been none. Had the cutback, had Ayari done better with the opportunities that he had. Sometimes we do get locked into what Sunderland should have done or what might have been from Sunderland. We forget that there's another team that are looking at it from the opposite point of view, and they're thinking, well, we kept a clean sheet against Sunderland, and we had these couple of opportunities or shooting chances, and we might have nicked a goal late on in the game when Sunderland were looking tired and a bit more leggy. We forget that there's another way to look at the game. So that would be my thought on that. But I think the bigger picture, the big picture view, if you bring the camera back a little bit, is it's an excellent point on the road with a clean sheet against an established Premier League team who were competing at the top end of or have been competing at the top end of the Premier League in recent times, with a Sunderland side that without some of their key players because they were down at AFCON. So I think that's a good point, and it leads us to Christmas. with 27 points from 17 games. I know what Martin was saying earlier about winning your home games, getting a point away. Obviously I subscribe to that theory, but I also look at it another way. As long as your points are ahead of your games, you're going in the right direction. Because obviously if you finish the season with 38 points, then you're going to survive in this day and age. Sunderland are 10 points ahead of that ratio now. And if they finish with 10 points more than if they finish with 48 points, they're going to be absolutely fine and doing really, really well. So, and they might finish with better than that ratio in fact over the course of the full season. I mean, the 10 points ahead of it with nearly half the season gone. I mean, imagine if they were 20 points ahead of, imagine if they finished the season with 58 points. Again, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it's an intriguing possibility if they can keep this going over the second half of the season. It's been a great return to the Premier League for Sunderland. Absolutely fantastic. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and there's still loads more to come. It will be indeed a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. Been a fantastic 2025. But Martin, last word on the game, because I almost feel guilty, when I've got, like I said, there's like 2% of me that is frustrated we didn't get all 3 points, but I feel guilty about being greedy about it. But, how do you look at it? Do you think it's just a good point gained at Brighton?
I'm content with the point. I'm certainly not going to grumble about it. I think, again, you can go to any Premier League side away from home. You're going to come under pressure. You've got to defend well. You've got to do the basics well. And then, as we've talked about countless times this season, it's about whether those little moments go for you. And we had a few moments that could have gone for us, and likewise Brighton did. So I think a draw is absolutely fine. And I think, again, you just take that point, put it in the bag, and we move on to the next game. The next game is a massive game for us, really. I think the Leeds game, the day after Boxing Day, I think it is, isn't it? The day after that. So, look, great points, and we could be greedy, couldn't we? And we could say, oh, we should have scored and we should have got 3 points. But I think the most pleasing thing at this point in the season is I reckon every single game we've gone, even the games that we've lost or got beaten, it's going, if that moment had gone a different way, we would have got something out of that game. It's not, we haven't been outplayed. You could argue the Man City game, but even the Man City game, I think we played well for a large chunk of that game. They were just better than us. But even if you take the Man City game out, but every single game, we have looked at home. We have looked competitive. Even that Burnley game, we played Burnley at the worst time anybody could have played Burnley. Never mind the bloody good fixture list that we've got. That was the worst time any Premier League team could play Burnley. But even that game, you look, well, if Andrew put that chance away, that's a different game completely. And I just think I'm so happy sat here. All the fixtures done up until Christmas, and we look so comfortable and so at home in the Premier League. And as we've talked about, so much opportunity to just tweak one or two things, introduce a new player or two that takes it up another level or two after January, because we've got the foundations built there. The basics are being done well. Everybody, looks such a... Happy is not necessarily the correct word. It looks such a together and cohesive and motivated squad who is willing to put everything on the line. Like Xhaka yesterday, I was saying before, when Isidore and Mundell came on, he was screaming at them at certain points for not closing down, getting on the ball. He's keeping everybody absolutely right. And Ballard talked during the week about how Xhaka's presence and what Xhaka's doing is influencing everybody else in the club. They're staying and doing more weight sessions, they're staying and doing this because they're looking at Granit Xhaka and going, well, if this fella who's won these things at Arsenal, won these things here, there, and everywhere, has played 100 billion times for Switzerland, is still doing this at his age, we should be doing that now. So you've got this whole sort of, it's like that momentum that just keeps building and building while we've got those really good foundations. And I just think it's we've had a great 2025. Who knows how good 2026 is going to be, because it's shaping up as if it's, again, these young players that we've got, they're getting better and better. You got Diarra to come back into the side. We'll make a couple of signs in January, surely. And who knows what the limit is. But, 2025, I reckon, has been my best season or best year supporting Sunderland just in terms of what we've seen on the field and the success that we've had. Who knows what happens in 2026, because a lot could.
That's it. We beat Everton in the third round. Sorry, go on, Jim.
Just to throw in there as well, reaching Christmas unbeaten at home.
How many seasons?
Who would have bet on that at the start of the season?
How many seasons have we gone till Christmas and barely had a home win? There's times where we've come to this point of the year, not had a win at home in the calendar year. And the Stadium of Light is genuinely now a fortress for us. It's an advantage for us. And for such a long time, it hasn't been an advantage for us. So, you've got all of these things that are coming together, and this is not by luck. This isn't by coincidence. It's by an awful lot of hard work and smart work behind the scenes from a good number of people. And again, I think we've got the foundations absolutely spot on, and who knows what happens after that.
Yeah, and like I said, that was me getting excited because we play every game like a cup tie almost. I just think if we get past Everton, I'm gonna start getting carried away, I think. But anyway, but James, just very quickly, 2 home games, of course, 28th, and then New Year's Day, Leeds, and then Manchester City. I imagine that's a busy period for you.
Not as busy as it used to be, obviously. But I'll be at both home games. It's enjoyable. I mean, I was just thinking only last weekend, the Derby game would have completely dominated my working week, the week before, and then the week after. In previous times, obviously, I don't have that same sort of consideration now, and it was lovely to go and actually enjoy the football match and take in the atmosphere rather than have my head buried in a laptop. But it's these 2 back-to-back home games that Sunderland have got coming up are going to be really important. If Leeds is one thing, obviously that's going to be tough. Another side that were promoted last season, that's going to be tough in itself. And then obviously Man City are one of those acid test games, aren't they? Already lost down at their place this season. If Sunderland are still unbeaten at home by that point, then that's going to be really exciting times. But Arsenal have come to the Stadium of Light, and Sunderland have held them. If Sunderland can hold Arsenal, then why can't they hold Man City?
Yeah, and I still think if they didn't get that deflected goal at the Etihad, I thought we were brilliant until that lucky goal. But yeah, anyway. but yeah, James, just so you can say, thank you very much for joining us during 2025, and obviously won't get a chance to speak to you. So have a fantastic Christmas and New Year, and hopefully we'll catch up in the new year.
Yes, indeed. Yes, thanks very much for inviting me on, guys.
Brilliant, thanks, James. And Martin, Christmas stops for some people, but of course, whatever your situation, we're going to be with the listeners, aren't we, on Christmas Day and Boxing Day through something that you put together or you organised.
Well, I suggested it. As as people who regularly listen to the podcast will know, we don't have any pride in shamelessly reinterpreting other people's ideas, have we? So we have done a 2-part large rotund quiz of the year, haven't we?
We have, and it was very rotund. We didn't mean to quite go on for so long. If people have got to spare, what is it, probably a couple hours at least on Christmas Day and Boxing Day.
It's a good hour and a half each day, but I have not laughed so much in a short period of time for years. So it was it was good fun to do.
Yeah, and we do apologise for some of the humour, because some of it might just have been funny to us at that point, as we got a little bit giddy during the quiz. But no, that's so that'll be coming Christmas Day and Boxing Day, Martin. Is that right?
That is correct. Absolutely, yeah.
Yep. So like I said, whatever your situation, whether you want to get away from the kids, or whether you want to stick the earbuds in and have a bit of quiet, or whether you just want to relax over Christmas and listen to us waffling on and get most of the questions wrong, I think was the order of the day during that. You can listen to that. But
who knows, Chris, what the scores were?
well,
and we will leave that there for people to discover the true meaning of when they listen.
Absolutely, yeah. If you listen with a pen and paper in your hand and try and count the score, we'd be
actually, if you can let us know what the scores were, that would be good.
we'd appreciate it. But no, Martin, just if we don't chat, have a fantastic Christmas, mate.
Yeah, you too, and Merry Christmas to all the listeners. If we don't hear from us before, obviously we'll have podcasts out every day, but I can't remember what we've got planned for the next few days, have we? So yeah.
Well, exactly. That's why I'm saying it. I might say Merry Christmas to everyone for the next 4 days or something on the podcast, because who knows what we've got coming up. But thanks again for everyone for listening. We really do appreciate it. Like I said, we'll be saying Merry Christmas for the next few days at least on this podcast. But look, the podcasts are going to keep on coming every single day. And of course, there's always going to be new content on the Roker Report website as well. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day. Yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.